Hello and welcome back to Inside the Wave. This is your host, Isaac Popper, and I'm here today with a special guest, Robbie Lastella, FAU beat reporter for Bleacher Brothers, covers both football and men's basketball today. And you know me, I've been hosting football videos with John Burroughs throughout the entire season. We've taken a break and we're back for a basketball video, but we're actually going to start a little bit with football because we have two Tulane football players that transferred over from FAU, and Robbie is nice enough to give us a little bit of background on Hayes and Mobley.
What's going on, everybody? Yeah, I love the inter AAC recruiting. I say the NBA is my least favorite league because there's no rivalries. I think moves like this, they kind of create little rivalries a little bit. They make it fun. So I'm happy that Zoo and Omari are in the conference. They're both really good players, in my opinion. We'll start with Zoo. The backs at FAU, despite they have never been the problem. The Herman regime had many problems, but the running backs, the running backs were never one of them. And that's why running backs coach Chris Perkins is the only staff member that was retained on new coach Zach Kitley's staff. So Zoo kind of really dealt with some injuries during his time at FAU. Had an ankle last year that kept him out some time, and he was also splitting time with CJ Campbell, who went on to go to Rutgers after a huge year. But the whole year, Tom Herman never kind of declared one or the other the starter. He was really confident in either of them as the starting running back. And I think, Campbell was definitely more of your receiving back for FAU, and Zoo was, if it's, 3rd and 3, he's got the power and the speed to kind of bust through and get you those 3 yards, and then occasionally kind of keep on going all the way to the end zone. He's got that second burst speed, but he's also got that power early on to break some tackles. So if he can stay healthy, he can definitely handle carries for Tulane. I think with some of the injuries that he's dealt with, he's probably best suited in a kind of committee situation. And if he can be in a committee, I think he'll be in a really good spot. I don't know the whole running back room, but he's a guy who you guys can put on the goal line, power in there for sure. He's not crazy power back, but he's got enough strength to him to where he can bully some defenders a little bit. And then Omari kind of burst onto the scene last year too. He was behind LaJohntay Wester, and everyone knows what LaJohntay did at FAU and then went on to go do it at Colorado. But Omari felt that he could have did the same thing if he was given the same opportunity. And honestly, if he had the quarterback play that LaJohntay had, he might have been able to put up some similar numbers. He would still put up some pretty dang good numbers. But the quarterback play for FAU last year was pretty inconsistent. And he was still the only guy that, in my opinion, was a acceptable target consistently in the pass game. He was getting open. He's a very good route runner, got a lot of speed to him as well. Slot guy for sure. I've seen Tulane kind of have these chunk plays. I think he'll definitely have a couple of those for the Green Wave next year. He's poised to kind of make a jump. He transferred there, I'm assuming, to try to kind of get to that next level, hopefully. He saw LaJohntay go to Colorado, do well. Tulane's not Colorado, but Tulane puts up pretty good numbers in their offense, and I'm pretty sure they put guys in the NFL a pretty solid amount. So if Omari can get some snaps consistently in the slot, I think he'll do well. He was able to develop chemistry with both quarterbacks this year for FAU, all 3 quarterbacks. And I think that's something that's a very good sign. He wasn't one quarterback specific. So I think he'll be able to go into Tulane and gel with whoever they end up with back there.
We look forward to getting both of those players. We had a running back who transferred in from Colorado and played here for a couple of years, and Shoddy Clayton Johnson, but he's in the portal at the moment. And Mekhi Hughes, as most fans know by now, is going to play with his brother at Oregon. So, of course, we wish him luck, and this is a good opportunity for Tulane. It's next man up here at Tulane. It's going to be a running back by committee, at least to start the season like it was 2 years ago. until Mekhi Hughes came away with that job, battling some other players. And it's the same this year. Personally, myself and co-host John on this podcast have talked about Jamari McClure, who we hosted on the show after his breakout game at UAB when we won 71-20. And McClure was a freshman this year, comes back due to Barnes, and then now you add Mobley. And then in Omari Hayes, a wide receiver, he has a real chance to start. Mario Williams and Keith Brown both are out of eligibility. Mario Williams headed to the NFL, hopefully drafted, had 1,000 yards at Tulane in rare company, first since 2013 when Ryan Grant did it. We'll see if Omari Hayes can get that starting spot.
Yeah, I mean, I liked his odds, just considering, he kind of learned behind LeJounte a little bit. They very similar types of players. They were close from what I remember. And so going to get a guy with a good mentality. And, I mean, he kind of came out of nowhere for FAU. He had no snaps really coming into this year, and he really took over. So he's not afraid of that spotlight. He was a go-to guy for FAU all year, and playing similar opponents. So I think he'll fare well. A lot of players like to try to get up to that P4 level, and they may not be ready yet. I don't know whether or not Omari is, but to stay in that same conference, it gives you a little bit of comfortableness, I guess you could say, against some similar opponents. So. I definitely think he can be solid, and I really like Zoo at Tulane. You guys have had a pretty solid O-line run blocking wise, from what I remember. So I think that'll pay some dividends for him for sure.
Yeah, they were one of the 10 finalists for the Joe Moore Award. This year, we do lose 3 starters, but replace them with many, many capable guys that are going to battle in spring camp for the starting spot, just like the same with the quarterback position. Tulane brought in a lot of guys. They'll all compete, and we'll see who wins out in spring. We'll see who wins out at the end of the summer. And then, of course, week-to-week basis, especially at the running back position. This year, Tulane mixed it in, and so maybe 1 week it's McClure, 1 week it's Judah Barnes, 1 week it's Zoo. We'll see what happens. Let's switch over to basketball. Good to talk about football while this has primarily been a football show, but we're going to have our first basketball podcast in a very long time, and the first on Inside the Wave specifically here. And Robbie, I know you've been following the team really closely. Tough loss on Sunday on national TV, ESPN, the mothership, as John Summerall likes to say. Can you give us a quick season recap?
Yeah, it's definitely new. The past 2 years have kind of spoiled FAU Nation a little bit. 12 new guys, a whole new coaching staff. Only returner being Trey Carroll, who's came out of I guess not really nowhere. He was playing last year a little bit. He's kind of that last big in the rotation, getting some spot minutes every now and then. He's came on really over the last about 8 games or so. Scored 15 or more over the past 7 out of the last 8. So Trey's been on one for FAU for sure. But to go back to the beginning a little bit, right away out of the gates, FAU, they came out and they dominated Indiana State in a neutral site. Things were going crazy. They were. I think they shot like better than 50% from 3. They almost scored 100 points, and then they went and beat Coastal Georgia too at home. That was NAIA, and then they blew them out too. So all of a sudden, everything was like, it's gonna be the same old FAU. You've been blowing everybody out. And they go on the road, which the road in the non-conference schedule for FAU was probably the hardest part. John Jacobs talked about it a lot. They were on the road for nearly 2 weeks after that Coastal Georgia game. They went to UCF, lost a tough battle, but that UCF game was kind of the start of a trend that's lingered a little bit here throughout the entire season. UCF really hurt them from beyond the arc, and FAU's really never kind of improved that perimeter defense since that game. They've had a few good games here or there, but they're sitting about 360th in the country right now in allowed 3-point percentage, so not very good out of 364 total teams. But, after that UCF game, then they had to go and play 2 straight tournaments in Charleston. So then they played Liberty and Charleston in the Field of 68 Classic, beat Liberty, which is arguably one of their best wins of the season, but they lose on the buzzer beater to Charleston in double overtime. Heck of a ball game. Ante Brzovic broke the hearts of FAU fans with about a shot from the logo at the buzzer to win that one for them. And then, so they went 1-1 in that tournament. They go and play in the Shriners Children's Classic, which, that was really going into the season. I was happy they were able to get into that tournament. It's always good to see AAC teams, other mid-major teams get into these, fairly big tournaments. But FAU went into that one. They won the first game. They beat Oklahoma State, an Oklahoma State team, which is rebuilding, going to be a struggle in the Big 12 this year. But then after that, they faced off against, in my opinion, one of the best mid-major teams in the country, and Drake. Drake beat the heck out of them. Played really, really good perimeter defense against FAU, and just frustrated them. One of the only games this season where FAU wasn't able to get up 23-pointers. They've had 1 or 2 where they were more paint focused, but normally they try to shoot 20 or more threes. Drake didn't let them. That was one of the only games where the defense really limited FAU's offense. And then they lost, started a little bit of a negative trend. They lost to Drake. They lost to Seton Hall to close out that tournament. And, Big East team, I'm going to be honest, I'm not really blown away by Seton Hall. I would have probably, going into that one, I thought, FAU would have won that one. That's probably one of the stinker losses, I guess you could say, on the resume. The other one being FGCU right after that. Both not really the best losses. FGCU's now beaten FAU in back-to-back seasons, though. However, Pat Chambers just might have their number. But it was, that 3-game dip for FAU was kind of tough on the morale on the road. Not much was going right there. And then they go back home, and then they lose to FGCU. It was just inconsistent defense, inconsistent shooting. And then they go and they win 3 in a row. They do what they should. They beat They beat FIU on the road, and then they beat Jacksonville and Texas State at home. 3 mid-major opponents, and FAU wants to be better than some of the other conferences out there. And so they handled their business and won those games, which is good. And in those 3 games, it was a little bit of a different approach than what they were going for, in my opinion, in the first whatever that was amount of games before that. They were very 3-point heavy in the first couple of games this season, and they still are. But in that 3-game win streak, you kind of saw the perimeter attack take a step back, and they were really taking their time, passing the ball around and attacking the rim a little bit more, and they won all 3 games, to their credit, doing that. Then they had a tough stretch. They had to go play at Michigan State, which I was really glad that game was on the resume too. Maybe next year or the year after, with a little bit more time in the system, they compete a little bit better. But year one of a new team, new coaching staff going in the Breslin Center, that's a tough battle for sure. And Michigan State, they had their way with FAU. That was one where not much was going FAU's way. They were inconsistent from beyond the arc. Defense was not good in the interior or on the perimeter. But what came out of that game was Trey Carroll doing really good against a really good opponent. I believe he had 24 in that one. And then, they had another tough matchup right after that. They played Memphis at home. Again, blowout loss. So back-to-back blowout losses there. Wasn't ideal. But to their credit, then they go out and then they win 2 in a row on the road. They beat ECU and Charlotte, 2 huge conference wins, just battling out those wins. ECU, it was after FAU really struggled from beyond the arc against Memphis. They shot 4 of 31. They shot 50% from beyond the arc against ECU. Almost lose that game, though, because they give up 25 offensive rebounds. They win by the hair on their chin, barely. They go to Charlotte. They beat Charlotte by 11, and they also bounce back on the glass, which was huge. And then against UAB, they bounced back on the glass again. They continued to build on that solid performance from Charlotte. They beat UAB on the offensive rebounding battle, and UAB's top 15 in the country in offensive rebound percentage. So that was good. But late in that one against UAB, they fought back from down 12. They were battling, and then they just kind of fell asleep late. A couple late turnovers. They didn't score from the field over the final 4 minutes. And they just had some, Jacobs mentioned after the game, and it's kind of been a problem at times this season. Poor shot selection. They could have passed the ball around a little bit more late. Had a couple contested layups that weren't the best look. And so now on to Tulane. The trend, unfortunately, this doesn't favor FAU. FAU has not. I don't know how to really describe it. They've only lost 2 in a row, or 3 in a row so far this season. They've never only lost 1 in a row. So FAU is either going to break that streak here at Tulane, or they're going to keep that one going. They're on a 1-game skid right now. Haven't been able to nip that in the bud yet this season, and so going to be a battle. But the good thing for FAU, they've been good in conference play on the road. They're battle tested on the road. But, they just haven't found a way to kind of respond to losses yet this season, at least the first time around. So they're going to have to in a big way, because you don't want to just keep doing these win 2, drop 2. It's not good for the morale. And so, but winning on the road and making that your thing and being, going into these opposing atmospheres and getting the win. Yeah, you want to win them all at home, but the road wins do good things for the confidence. So it's been an up and down season so far for FAU, but I will say for year 1 of a completely rebuilt roster, they're doing fairly solid in my opinion. You can't really ask for too much more outside of not losing the FGCU in the Seton Hall game, and Seton Hall is even okay, but they really haven't had too many bad losses. UAB, we talked about it. They struggled in the beginning of the season, but now they've won 2 in a row, so they might be back. And so, honestly, to be competing to be a top 4 team in the conference, which FAU's that's their top 4, top 5. That's going to be the goal, unless they fall off here. That's pretty solid for year 1 of a head coach. Now, got to finish conference play strong and want to see them make a little bit of noise in the AAC tournament, see what happens. But overall, so far this season, I'd say it's been pretty solid year 1.
Awesome. Thanks, Robbie, for the details.
Yep.
A lot of interesting trends here, and Tulane's sort of on the opposite trend, whereas they really struggled in the non-conference and didn't have many challenging opponents where you guys did. And then here in the conference play, it's going really well so far. 3-1, with the one loss being against UAB, Alabama Birmingham, on the road, who just beat you guys. So clearly a good team. And Tulane was tied with them down the stretch, maybe 54-54. Still a decent amount of time left, but they really battled with UAB until the last 8 to 10, 12 minutes in that game. I am wondering if you know this, but FAU has won at least 2 of their last 4 conference games in 7 straight years now. Obviously, we all know that Dusty May had done such a good job with FAU. It's been a great home environment over the last handful of years and a long time at FAU. But you bring in a first-year head coach. That's really, really hard to have success in your first year. Tulane did it with John Summerall in football, but he was able to keep a lot of those coaches, bring in some talented coaches, kept a lot of his talented players, bring in a lot of his talented players. I think John Jacobs did about as good as you could do in basketball as a first-year head coach in terms of building the roster, but it's just really hard to bring in the talent right now as a first-year head coach. And Ron Hunter experienced some similar difficulties. Obviously not a first-year head coach, but Sion James left, Kevin Cross out of eligibility, Jalen Forbes out of eligibility, Colin Holloway was done. He was a senior last year, as well as James. Trey Williams out of eligibility. A lot of guys that played last year were in the rotation had no eligibility. So Tulane came and replaced over 90% of their scoring. It struggled as they really figured out how to gel together. Ron Hunter's been comparing it to, he keeps bringing up marriage. He's like, they instantly got married, and and they tried to figure it out. And of course, it wasn't super pretty the first couple of times, and now it's looking pretty good. So I'm interested to see how this game goes for Tulane. You guys are basically a top 100 team, I'd say, 104 in net. You were inside the top 100 before the UAB game on Sunday, which was yesterday, as we're recording this on Monday.
Yep.
And you're also still inside the top 100 in Ken Palm, even after losing to UAB. So this would be a great win for Tulane, by far their best of the season so far, but a lot of opportunities still remain. Memphis on January 30th to be one of them, just 2 weeks later. Trey Carroll is a player I want to ask you about because you mentioned him as somebody who's been really coming on of late. I would say that he's been tremendous. First 9 games, 7.5 points, 4 rebounds, less than 1 assist, less than half a block per game, under 50% from the field. Last 8 games, 18 points per game, 6 rebounds per game, 2 assists per game when he was averaging less than 1 assist per game, 1 block per game when he was averaging less than half a block per game, 57% field goal when he was shooting under 50%. Obviously, he's playing more. He started the last 3 after he used the same lineup the whole season until the last 3 games. But why is he also playing better, even on a permanent basis?
He just kind of looks like he's stepped into that role he watched all the old FAU guys of the past couple of years do. I'm sure he's gotten a lot of work with Isaiah Austin, who people aren't familiar. He was on Baylor in the 2010s and almost went to the NBA draft. I'm not remembering the name of his neurological disorder that he had, but he had something that kept him out of the NBA draft. And he so went on to play overseas a little bit. Now he's on FAU's coaching staff, big Baylor legend. And he works hands-on with FAU's big men. And I'm sure he's gotten a lot of work with Trey Carroll. Trey has definitely been more aggressive so far this season. He's just got a different confidence to him. It's kind of tough to build a lot of confidence when you're the third big man coming in only when there's injuries or it's a blowout. And so now, he's getting his opportunity to have that ball on the perimeter, drive to the rim, and convert. And, he's just got a ton of energy to him. When he was coming off the bench at the beginning of the season, he was kind of the spark plug. FAU's offense would go stagnant at times. Bring in Trey, get you a quick bucket. I think his diversity, too, is huge because he's not, Steph Curry from beyond the arc, but he's a respectable shooter. And so that kind of forces the defense to spread out a little bit, but he's also kind of 6'7", 240, 250-ish. So when he gets that ball on the perimeter and he hits you with the shot fake, that's a big guy coming at you off the dribble to the rim. So he's got a lot to his game that he's really been able to untap now that he's getting more minutes. And I think working with the staff, which I'm pretty high on, it's a very diverse staff, a lot of different backgrounds, NBA experience, college, some pros, obviously. And so I think that's helped him. But it just comes down to he's having his time to shine. You could just tell, especially against UAB, he's loving every moment of this. He described his first career start as a dream come true. And against UAB, he's going crazy, shaking his hair. For Tulane fans who haven't seen Trey, Google him. He's got this crazy hair going on. He's just good. He's good vibes. I know opponents aren't supposed to like other players, but I promise you, Trey's got good vibes to him, and he's just happy to be there. And to see him succeed, I don't think there's anyone more deserving at FAU. I mean, he kind of saved the FAU nation from complete pandemonium by coming back. Obviously you want to keep all the guys who were big contributors to the past couple of years, but Trey was kind of that cult fan favorite a little bit. And so to see him succeeding is awesome. And so, to the exact reason why, who knows? But he's loving it. The fans are loving it. And now we just got to hope he can keep this up through the rest of the season, because outside of him, over the past couple games, I mean, guys have spot good nights. Bob Miller's been fairly consistent, but it's really outside of Miller and Carroll, there's not much consistency offensively for FAU. So if he can keep it up, I think FAU will definitely win some more games here in the conference and potentially make some noise in the AAC tournament. But happy for Trey, and I know FAU fans are ecstatic.
Nice. You hit on a few things I actually was going to say about him. I think he's a load of fun. And the other thing is, I almost didn't realize he was a big when I started watching him play for the first few times, because he can be all over the place and do a lot of different things for you, which is impressive. Also, not just in international staff, but also in international team. About half the team is international. Do you think that Isaiah Austin is the tallest assistant in college basketball? I was wondering this, and we had Mo Spites come to town on Saturday for South Florida, but he's only 6'10". Austin's over 7 feet.
Yeah. Isaiah's a big dude. I don't know how these manager games work between universities, but Isaiah somehow is allowed to play in these.
And so is Mo Spites somehow.
Yeah, and I feel bad for Jimmy. He comes over to Tulane or FAU as a freshman, and he wants to, be a manager and potentially play in these games. And he's got Isaiah Austin going. I don't know. That's pretty tough. He might be the tallest. He might be the scariest too. He's very vocal on that bench for FAU. He lets the refs hear it. He got teed up against, I believe it was Drake. Got a little bit of a warning from the referees against UAB, but didn't get the tee there. He's very vocal. He talks to the players a lot. He's breaking down the huddle. And so, yeah, he's definitely a figure on that staff for sure. And I like I was mentioning to you, I think this staff really makes this team what it is. It's really the international ties are big. Todd Abernathy's has some overseas playing ties. Jake has coached overseas, but it's really just the diversity. I mean, you've got a couple NBA guys, AD Malhotra, who came over from the Suns, Obim Okeke, who played for Baylor, both football and basketball, and then he was with the Thunder as a player development guy last couple of years. And so you have these two guys who are in the NBA coaching, and so they have that perspective. And then you've got a couple guys who are in collegiate levels. Jordan Fee comes over from Gannon University, where he put up insane numbers, over 100 points per game. And he did the same thing in Nova Southeastern with Jim Crutchfield, who's the most winningest D2 coach of all time, might be all time. And so, the diversity definitely helps. And you got another guy on there, Eric McClellan, who played at Gonzaga. And so it's just, and I think the glue that kind of kept the staff together was you have all these new pieces from different places, but you have Todd Abernathy, who was on Dusty's staff. Fans know his face, family guy, raises his kids here, didn't want to leave because his kids are all in school. And so he remains on that staff. He was a talented point guard for Ole Miss back in the day under Andy Kennedy. So that was big to keep him. And yeah, so I think we lost Isaac here. So we lost him, but he's back. But yeah, so I like the diversity of the staff. The international ties are huge. But I think the diversity is what really makes it interesting.
If you had to pick two keys for victory, what would they be?
For FAU or for Tulane?
For FAU.
So
and for FAU, for Tulane.
For FAU to win this game, they're gonna have to get consistent perimeter shooting. Against UAB, they were able to shoot 50% from beyond the arc in the first half. In the second half, that dipped down below 20%. And thankfully, Trey and Baba were able to kind of carry them through that stretch where they fell behind by 12. But if they didn't have some heroics there, it would have been a little bit of a struggle in the second half. Wouldn't have been close, and then it would have been a much different story. But the perimeter shooting's got to be consistent. FAU's offense is, as it is what it is. They live by the three, they die by the three. If they want to adjust how sometimes they have this season and be more paint centric, maybe they do that. But more times than not, FAU shooting 20 to 30 triples a game. And if they're going to be successful, they need to hit 33% of those and a third. And so, I think that's important. Also on offense, I'll give 2.5. They got to be more clean with the ball. They didn't have a ton of turnovers against UAB, but 11. UAB was able to turn that into, I think, like almost 20 points. So that's not good. And then on the defensive side of the ball, at the end of the day, what's plagued them the entire season, the only thing that's been red, dark red on KenPom all season long has been perimeter defense. They're allowing teams to shoot near 40% from beyond the arc. And if Tulane is able to shoot 35% or better from three, that's not a good sign for FAU. Want to try to limit Tulane as much as they can from beyond the arc, because FAU's interior defense has been pretty good this season. And so if they're able to defend the perimeter solid, I like their odds defensively, and then it'll just come down to whether they're able to shoot consistently as well.
Interesting. I think that Tulane can easily get hot. That's what we saw happen last year against FAU. Really, really great game, great crowd in Devlin Fieldhouse when you guys came to town. Also a close game at your place too, but when we were here, when you guys came to Devlin last year, almost the same exact time. It was January 11th. This game's January 15th. About the same last year. Maybe it was a Saturday and this is a Wednesday, or similar.
No, I think it was a midweek game last year too.
That's what I wanted to say. Maybe it was a Thursday night.
I don't know. I just remember I was at home watching it, and it was definitely a weekday. I don't know if it was Wednesday or Thursday though. But
basically the same timing. Last time students weren't fully back, but a lot of them were back. Mostly the upperclassmen. This time students are back. So one of my keys is, will the students show up? I hope they do. This is a plea for the students to show up in the Devlin Fieldhouse. If Tulane can even emulate half of the atmosphere that FAU has in Boca, then I think this team can be a problem for FAU and at least give the Owls a run. So I want to see the fans there loud. This team seems to play off the energy in the stadium, and we've seen it. We've seen it for FAU. We saw it when the Tulane beat Memphis and stormed the court for the first time this century, just in their next home game after they played FAU. Again, last year, FAU was down with a couple seconds left. Elijah Martin, NBA prospect, takes a three, fouled by Jalen Forbes. I still don't think it was a foul. I'm pretty confident of that. We can debate that after we finish up the podcast a little bit more, but Elijah Martin hit his free throws after the whole Tulane student section, moved behind the basket to distract him. Unfortunately, it didn't work. He's an NBA prospect. He knew what he was doing and made his shots. So I'm going to go with the fans for my first key. My second key is Banks and Brumbaugh. It's been the dynamic duo. In their losses, they're averaging less than 25 points per game. In their wins, they're awesome. When Brumbaugh has over 5 assists, they win. I think they're 7-0 when Brumbaugh has over 5 assists, and maybe 2-8 when it's 5 or less or something like that. So 1-7. So clearly we need Brumbaugh to pass well, and we need Banks to score. Banks needs to be aggressive and take advantage of the matchups he's given. Using the perimeter in his shot, if he can get the shot going, that makes him dangerous because then you'll have to guard him out at the perimeter a little bit extra. And he likes to attack off the dribble. Watch out for some Caleb Banks dunks. We've seen it basically every game in Devlin this season. Before we sign off, do you have a score prediction for us?
A score prediction. Well, here, I don't want to cheat really quickly here.
KenPom?
Yeah, I'm looking. Let's see here. So, all right. KenPom is saying FAU's taking this one 78-76. Wow. I've learned recently KenPom is actually crazily accurate with that kind of stuff. I don't know if it'll actually be a 2-point game, but 4-point game, whatever. But I don't know. FAU's offense has kind of been up and down lately, but they've been good on the road. I don't trust the perimeter defense to bounce back just yet. I do think it'll be a shootout. I'm probably Statistics. FAU hasn't won or hasn't won a game when they've only lost one in front of it. So odds aren't looking too good for FAU, at least from that sense. But I think they're kind of hungry. Jake has mentioned that they had their chances against UAB. They were up 2 with the ball, lost that one. They're up 2 with the ball with under, I think,
it was a great comeback.
And so they're kind of fired up right now. I think they go in and I think they win this one. And, maybe Ken Palm's right, but I'll take it. I'll take it 84-80. I say there's no defense played in Devlin Fieldhouse. It's a shootout. It's Devlin Fieldhouse, right? Did I say that right?
Yep.
All right,
well,
nice.
Tulane 34-4 when they score over 80, so you better be careful with that prediction.
Oh, okay. Hey.
In the last 3 seasons.
I you know what? I don't know though, because that's FAU's approach has kind of been bombs away from deep and see what happens on defense. I mean, if they're playing good defense, they're in a better situation, obviously. But 360th out of 364 teams for perimeter defense. It's been a struggle. The switching at times has been behind. And it's just, sometimes when defense and new teammates and whatnot, it takes time for automatic switches and communication to all sync up. So I think it'll be a shootout. It should definitely be close. And we'll see what happens. FAU wants to bounce back, but Tulane wants to keep on rolling as well. So that's what I love about the AAC. A lot of trolls on Twitter. Like to make fun of the good old American Conference, but I think I think basketball is really fun. I mean, whatever happens in the non-con, whatever, it kind of devalues the conference a little bit. But the games in conference play, there's nothing better. They're all battles. I mean, you just saw ECU go take Memphis to the brink of a loss there on the road. So ECU is nothing. Nothing special. At least that's what it says on paper. But you know what? You never know. All I do know is that this game for sure, I don't see it being a blowout. I can say that on either way. I think it'll be close, and it'll come down to the hustle points, and that's about it. FAU's lost things in unfortunate ways. So it's the little things. Win the little things, and you'll probably find a way to win.
I agree. I think one of those losses when Tulane scored 80 was last year, 85-84 after Martin hit the free throws. I think it was robbed. So, maybe it's 35-3 when that happens. And one of those 4 losses was also a game recently when Tulane lost in OT. So we'll see what happens. Regardless, probably a close game. If you don't have tickets already, make sure to get out there. Robbie, thanks so much for jumping on the podcast. Where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, for sure. Give me if you guys would care to give me a follow. I follow over and back. Occasionally, I'll write an AAC column for Bleacher Brothers. So you can follow my Twitter at @Lastella Report. If you want to keep up with the Owls, it's FAU Owls Nest on Twitter. So thank you, guys. Thank you, Isaac, for having me on. I think this is a great a podcast to be on. I like that it's associated with the NIL Collective. I like seeing forward-thinking schools, even in the same conference. And Tulane's at the front of that. They're very forward-thinking. So you guys keep up the great work on this podcast, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Robbie.